Hello, I'm James Conroy from DES105. I'm going to be showing you my unit game called Rocket Ride. The game is pretty simple. It is a 2D endless scroller. So you play as this little character going through space, and you can collect coins while avoiding lightsabers. The game has a few menus. It has the main menu and the pause menu. We have the pause menu, where it says adventures paused, and if we die, we have a retry as well. So we click that, we retry. So if we go into the code here, we'll start off with the player controller. So the player controller code is attached to the actual player object, or the character. And so this line of code here is the ground check. So what this is doing here is if the player's hitbox is touching the floor of the game, then the player is titled as grounded. It's basically on the floor, and this is setting this is working in conjunction with the player animator to then reduce which we will see here in the next function, is working with the player animator to reduce the jetpack particles. So this function is essentially doing what I've just said. It is changing the rate of particles emitted from the jetpack. So when the player is grounded, I want you to reduce the amount of particles to give a hovering kind of animation. So there's like a little amount of particles, but then when the player propels up into the sky, I want more particles come out. So to do this, I created the grounded animation, working with a grounded tag that is attached to the player. And whenever the player is grounded, the emission will be set to like 75 particles. So a small amount will come out as you saw in the game, but then when the player is no longer on the floor or grounded, more particles come out. So this is set to 600 particles to emit. This function here is totaling up the amount of coins collected. So every time a coin is collected, when the player interacts with one of them, it adds 1 to the count, and it also destroys the coin. So because the game really has two objects, which is a lightsaber and the coin, this function here is determining whether the player is interacting with coin or interacting with a lightsaber. Now, this was made simple because of the small amount of objects, two objects. All I had to do was tag the coins with the coin tag. So if the player is colliding with any object that has a coin tag, then it's going to add a coin to the coin counter. If the player interacts with anything else, it's been registered as hitting a lightsaber. So this is useful for the next function, which is going to set the player's state to dead if they interact with a lightsaber. So anytime the player hits a lightsaber, that's true. And then we're also changing the animation for the player, so the player models changes to the death animation. This function here is pretty simple. It's restarting the game. So when the player clicks it, it is then restarting back to restarting the game. So the coin count restarts and the player goes back. This is the update line. This is emitting the particles whenever the right mouse button is clicked. So fire 1 is the right mouse button, and it's also checking if the jetpack is active, basically flying. So if the player's jetpack is active, then, which is input here with the fire button, then the player is going to propel up and basically shoot more particles out. So this function here is going to basically kill the player. This is killing the player. So if the player is in the dead state, then their velocity is equal to new velocity, and new velocity is equal to the forward movement speed, which is 0. So if the player is dead, then they're not going to go forward anymore, and they're not going to be able to input anything. They're not going to be able to go upwards. This here is going to also display the restart button if the player dies. So if the player dies, the restart button props up on the screen. This function here, this is the lightsaber script. So this function causes the lightsaber to turn off and on. So what's happening here is the time is reduced every time the lightsaber turns off and on. So this will change the lightsaber state if the time is less or equal to 0. So if there's time to change the state of the lightsaber between the two, the off and on sprites, then if it's equal to 0 or less than 0, then it will change a sprite. The collider for the lightsaber, so that they can actually kill the player, only appears when the lightsaber is set to the on sprite function here. This will make sure the sprite is correct. So if the lightsaber is on, then we're wanting the lightsaber sprite on, the lightsaber on sprite to appear, and anything else would be the lightsaber off sprite. This resets the time until the next toggle for the on and off of the lightsaber, so this creates a loop. This is a simple line, so the lightsaber to spin. So to do this, I put this line of code in. This is constantly rotating the lightsabers, so it's transformed the position of it. This is the space generator. Now this generates the objects, which is lightsaber and coins, and it also generates the background and floor and roof as well. So what we're doing here is we're adding a room. It's selecting from the array of objects, which is the space background, and then it is generating that selected object. And this line of code here, so the game object room is equal to whatever was randomly selected here. This is now, because the actual background, the space background, is not a solid object, we get the scale of the floor to determine the size of the room, because they are essentially the same size. So what we're doing here is the room's width is equal to the scale of the floor. This here is setting a new background to its correct location. So to do this, we are taking half of the floor's width and and adding it to the end of the floor. So then that creates the exact position the new floor should be set up in, creating like a consistent floor that keeps generating. This also sets the position of the space background, so let's make sure this is lined up with the floor. And this is adding to a list and constantly tallying up the generated backgrounds. And so selecting between either a lightsaber or coins, and then this is generating the previously selected object. It's a bit different here though, so this is setting random coordinates for the said generated object. So the object's position is equal to the last generated object, and then a random distance and added on. That's here is then generating a random rotation for the object, so it's going to come in at a different angle each time. This doesn't matter too much for the lightsaber as it rotates. So this here is then adding the generated object to a list similar to this one, so that is just for later on when we need to remove each object. An object behind the player, then it needs to be removed. These little lines of code here are also finding the location of the most recently generated object. So that's also useful for when we need to determine where a new object should be placed. So this is creating, because we can't use the list here, we have to create a separate list of objects to be removed, so we create a new list here. This here determines the actual current location of the object to be removed, and this is also then determining whether the actual object is behind the player. This little loop here actually does remove the object, it destroys it, so it gets rid of it. And this does the opposite, so this will add an object if the player is approaching close to the last generated object, so it keeps generating objects ahead of the player before they see it. This is adding a new list of rooms to be removed. Then we're constantly adding rooms, so we're going to just keep it set to true, and this is going to keep track of the player's position so we can know when it's approaching the end of the screen or the background. This here sets us up to remove a background whenever it hits a certain point, and this will do the opposite, so this will set up to add a background if the player's about to reach the edge of the previously generated background. This saves the point where the background does end, so wherever the background ends, the previously generated one, this is then kind of giving us the point where it actually does end so that we can use to generate a new one. So this loop here is constantly getting the begin and the end points of the backgrounds. So the room's width is equal to the floor, which is similar to the code above. So then we're using the room start is equal to that minus room width times half of thing. So this sets up the new position where the new background should go. This determines if there has been a new room added, determining if a room is off the screen and is ready to be removed. This layer finds the furthest right point of the floor, which is useful because then we use that to add another floor on. We use that location to do that. So this here constantly removes rooms that have been selected, similar to the objects one before, it deletes them. And this does the opposite, so it's adding every time a new object is needed and the player's getting up. This here just basically adds a 0.25 second loop between each run of the code to keep the game from lagging, so it doesn't run poorly. And yeah, this is pretty simple. This just is a camera follow, so we're finding the distance of the player to the camera. So the player's on the left hand side of the screen, the camera's centered in the middle, and this little function here is consistently changing the camera's location, so it keeps it moving and basically centered essentially on the screen, but at the same time it is keeping the player on the left hand side of the screen. So this creates what I've just said, so it's taking the player's distance from the camera and keeps him offset to the left. This is simple. This is just a return button, so it's load the main menu. Every time the return to menus button selected, it's also setting the timescale back to 1 because that's set in the pause menu, so then we reset the game to actually work. This is a quit button, it's quitting the application, and this here is the pause script. So whenever the escape button is pressed, we're then pausing the game, and if not, I assume the game is again continued. And this is actually pausing the game, so it's setting the timescale to 0, and it's making the pause panel appear. And this is doing the opposite, so it's setting the timescale to 1, and getting rid of that pause panel that appears. This is the play button, so this essentially is when you click is loading up the game for the player to actually play. That's pretty much it for my game. Yeah, thank you for listening.